Welcome to the channel. Today we're sharing a cheating story you won't believe. If you enjoy it, please like and subscribe. Let's get started. I should have realized it sooner, don't you think? When I look back, it feels so obvious, like two trains heading for a collision. But I guess I wasn't watching closely enough. Maybe one train was just out of sight. The clues were all there, but I was too focused on her to notice. And then, when things finally crashed, it hit me out of nowhere. Let's cut the metaphors and get straight to the story. All through my school life, they must have been there. Well, they were there, but you kind of didn't notice that there were two of them. Then that's it. They weren't two people really, they were a single entity. Olivia Turner and Chloe Harper, two girls, one personality. As I remember, all through school they were referred to as the twins. They dressed alike, spoke alike. Their hair was styled the same. They were like a pair of twins but weren't related. Might as well have been joined at the hip. Don't get the idea that they were standoffish or anything. Once they were in their teens, they dated boys all the time. The only problem was that they only double dated. If a guy fancied one of them, he not only had to get her attention, he had to find a suitable date for the other one. I must admit, I liked the look of both of them, but I never did get to know either of them well. I couldn't be bothered to play this silly double date game. A guy would be running around for weeks trying to find a suitable candidate that the girls would find acceptable to make up the foursome. I learned at a young age that the girls could be choosy when they wanted to be, and from what I heard, the girls wanted to be. It was probably all a game to them anyway. The problem never came up for me, really, because when I was 24, my old man talked my Michael Jones into taking me as an apprentice plumber. That was my old man all over, get yourself an apprenticeship, boy, you'll have a job for life. The only problem with that darn apprenticeship was that I had to go and live with my Michael Jones and Aunt Margaret in Brookfield. Brookfield, the big city and bright lights. We lived in the suburbs, and most of my Michael Jonas and my work was out in the suburbs as well. I had one day and one evening a week at a technical college, also in the suburbs. Michael Jones wanted blood for his money, so by the time I got home at night, I was so knackered, traveling up into town wasn't an option. Add to that, Michael Jones was a workaholic. Correction. He was under the impression I was a workaholic. He always had little jobs lined up for the weekends. You missed a day's work during the week to go to college, you can make it up on the weekends, boy. So, my planned monthly weekend trips home soon became bi-monthly. You get the idea. I got home 3 times the first year and besides New Year, once the second year. By the end of the 4th year, my dog had started growling at the stranger when I walked in the door of my parents' home, and there was a lodger sleeping in my room. I had to share my little brother's room. Apprenticeship over, I decided I would had enough of working for Michael Jones. I really don't think he was too pleased when I took my leave. Bollocks to him, the old bugger had got his money's worth out of me. Home wasn't home anymore for me, if you get my drift. I would manage to save a lot of the meager salary Michael Jones had paid me over the years, so I had enough in the bank to allow me to put an initial deposit down and rent a little flat of my own back in my hometown. Work wasn't a problem either. I had my papers, and I was soon on the books of one of the regional agencies. The work was hard, but at least the money was spectacular after what Michael Jones had been paying me. Plumbers who really knew what they were doing were not exactly rare, but were a bit thin on the ground back then. Well, young ones were. Before I realized what was happening, I was working on a site of about 50 new houses. Once that site was finished, I was offered a job by a smaller builder on a barn conversion. It was a small job, only about 10 of us on the site, and the owner was around most days. The boss and I were studying the plans one day over a cup of tea, and I just happened to mention that the way the architect had planned things, there was going to be a great blank area of wall on the front of the building. I just said that if it was my place, I would make some changes that I thought would make the place look better. The boss pushed the artist's impression drawing of the finished house at me and said, "Show me." So, I roughly sketched in the changes I thought would be improvements. Later that day, I was called into the little shed we were using as a site office. There, I found the boss, the owner of the house, and the architect. After some strong words were exchanged between the architect and the owner, my changes were added to the plan. It was on the day we handed the newly converted house over that the architect came over to me. "Son, you're in the wrong business. You should have been an architect or a designer at least. You've got an eye for design." A couple of weeks later, I signed up for a part-time college course learning to be an architect. I still worked on the building sites to earn the money to support my studies, but I was heading into the design side of the business. It was in the college library that I first saw her. I had just sat down at one of the large tables to look up some references in a book when a young lady on the other side of the table looked up from the book she was reading, and our eyes met. She gave me a wonderful smile and returned to reading her book. The face was familiar, but I couldn't place it. I kind of sat there, confused, and stared at her. Well, she was a very good-looking young woman. Some minutes later, she looked over at me again. I quickly looked down at the book I was studying, trying to pretend I hadn't been staring at her. Out of the corner of my eye, I was aware of her getting up from the table and walking around it until she was standing beside me. Embarrassed that she'd seen me watching her, I didn't raise my head and pretended to be lost in the book before me. The young lady reached out and rotated my book through 180 degrees. You'll find it easier to read, Daniel, if it is the right way up. I looked up at her. You don't recognize me, do you, Daniel? Amy, Olivia Turner. You've changed some. Do I take that as a compliment? Of course you do. But where's Emma? I added, looking around. Emma's in the Germany doing an internship. We're both supposed to be on a gap year from uni. We got placements together in the Germany for the year, but mine fell through and Emma went on her own. You two do everything together. Well, normally we do, but it was too good an opportunity for her to pass up. When did she go? About a month or so back. I thought I would spend a year brushing up my Spanish, so I signed on here. Amy, or Olivia as she had always been known at school, and I talked for a while until the librarian came over and told us to be quiet. Then we adjourned to the refectory. By the time she had to go to her class, we made a date for that evening. Well, kind of. I was driving her home from college in my minivan that night. As I was doing some private work on the side, I would bought myself an old minivan to carry all my gear around in. I did wonder what her folks thought when my tatty old minivan with ladders on the top pulled up outside their upmarket house that evening. Olivia and I sat in the minivan for some time, chatting about school days and the like. In the end, I asked her to go out with me the following evening. Could be that I should have picked up something in her reply with hindsight. I think I should have. That would be nice, Daniel. I haven't been out since Emma went away. I arrived at her house about 7:30 that Wednesday evening. The door was opened by her father, who looked me over like I was something the cat had dragged in. The expression on his face when he looked at my minivan was something I can't describe. I was shown into the lounge where Olivia's mother and her younger sister were sitting to wait until Olivia was ready. Olivia's mother was very pleasant, and so was her sister. I remembered Olivia's sister, Charlotte, from school. To be honest, I think I got the old swooning looks from her. It struck me that Olivia's father didn't like me. This is not an uncommon attitude for a father to take. After all, he was young once and knew how most young guys' minds worked. Standard fatherly protective behavior, if you ask me. When Olivia entered the room, my jaw dropped. Remember, I would known Olivia since she was a little kid. The day before, I was struck by her pleasant face and nice figure. But there was no way that I was prepared for the woman that walked into the lounge that evening. Was it Bobby V who sang poetry in motion? Well, there it was, standing before me. I think my heart stopped beating for a moment. Well, I definitely remember I found that speech was impossible for quite some time. That evening, we went to a local night spot. Nothing flashy, just a pub that had live music and a dance floor of sorts. Although we did dance a few times, Olivia and I spent most of the evening talking. Don't ask me what we talked about because I haven't got the slightest recollection. I can just tell you that whenever we got together, we were talking most of the time. No matter what the subject, we appeared to agree on just about everything. That is, except for Emma. I had no interest in Emma at all, although I feigned interest to keep Olivia happy. It was clear to me that she had been missing her almost lifelong companion, and I suppose it was really understandable. I just wished I would understood at the time that Emma was the other train I was talking about hiding in that tunnel. Well, that first date and the little kiss I got at the end of it led to a second and third date following in quick succession. By the end of the month, Amy and I had become an item. When we weren't at college or working, we were together. I would find Olivia waiting by my minivan when I came out of my evening college classes, and on the days I was at college, she would meet me for lunch. To be honest, I was besotted with her, and from what she said and how she behaved, I thought she was besotted with me. Olivia joined me in my bed for the first time after we'd been together about 3 months. For some reason, she couldn't use the pill, so we had to resort to other means of protection against her becoming pregnant. I've got to say it kind of took the edge off the moment and spoiled the mood a little. Consequently, we didn't get to actual intercourse very often. We found other ways to satisfy our desires. I knew that Olivia was writing to and receiving letters from Emma all the time, but I didn't know the effect they were having on our relationship. Olivia's sexual. Damn, how can I put it? Olivia's sexual preferences and what she wanted or was willing to try out slowly changed over time. I don't know why it didn't strike me as strange at the time. When we first got in bed together in mid-January, Olivia wanted nothing to do with oral sex. But around June, Olivia suddenly wanted to try it. For someone who thought giving head was dirty, she soon turned into an enthusiastic expert. And where she had refused to let me go down on her, she was then begging me not to stop. After some time, Olivia started talking about getting engaged. No, that's silly. We both had been talking about it for some time, but it was around that time we started talking seriously about getting engaged and getting married. I bought her a ring in late January, and we planned to get married right after she took her finals at university the following summer. Olivia's mother was over the moon at our plan. Her father wasn't as enthusiastic. I think he thought his daughter could do better than a darn plumber, as I heard him say on more than one occasion when he thought I was out of earshot. Charlotte told me straight she wanted me to drop Olivia and marry her instead. It was early January when Emma returned from Germany. She had her American boyfriend in tow, and I've got to say I didn't like the guy from the start. To my mind, he was everything that I didn't like in Yanks all rolled into one. He was a brash fool who was forever bragging about himself and how clever he was. Now, don't get the idea that I don't like Americans. I've got some good friends from over the water. There was an American airbase near our town, and I would grown up with a lot of American friends. My first proper girlfriend that I would had while still at school had come from Houston. No, like all nationalities, among them are the ones that give all a bad name. Daniel Parker was one of those. While he was in the country, he stayed at Emma's parents' house. Of course, there was no way that the Browns were going to let him and Emma share a bed as they had apparently been doing while Emma was over there in America. Emma and Andrew had only been in the country a couple of days, and I hadn't met either of them yet. I came home from work one evening to find Olivia sitting in the kitchen of my flat. She'd had her own key for some time. There were 3 coffee cups on the table, which I gave a cursory glance to as I took Olivia into my arms and kissed her. I told her I wouldn't be a couple of minutes changing and then we'd go out and eat. You can't go in there yet, Olivia blurted out. I looked at her. Emma and Andrew are using our bed. Like heck they are, a very apt statement on my part, actually. But I'm one of those people who believe in the old adage an Englishman's home is his castle, and in my home, the most personal item of furniture is my bed. This probably goes back to me returning to my parents' house from Michael Jonas and finding a lodger sleeping in my bed. I think they must have heard my outburst, which I won't repeat here, because it was only a couple of minutes later that Emma and Andrew entered the kitchen, still in the throes of getting dressed. For all their apologies, they didn't change the sheets or even make the bed. Olivia assured me that they didn't ask her permission to use my bed. We were so close by then that everything was referred to as ours. From the way Andrew and Emma behaved, I've always believed Olivia on that one. They acted as if they were the most important people in the world. While Andrew was in the country, the 4 of us hung around together, although Emma borrowed her father's car most of the time, as there were only 3 seats in the front of my minivan. Not that Emma wanted to lower herself to ride in it anyway. I steadfastly refused to ride in Emma's father's car because once they were away from her house, Andrew was doing the driving. Olivia always rode with me. I've got to say that it was with some sick amusement that I watched him drive out of a pub car park one evening, straight into the front of a bus. I was sounding my horn, and I think that was why the bus driver managed to bring the bus to a standstill before Andrew drove into it, so there wasn't too much damage. Andrew had tried to drive along the wrong side of the road, a common mistake for foreigners to make. As I had surmised, Andrew was not insured to drive the car and wasn't in possession of an international license, although the police appeared happy to accept his American license. Once Emma's father arrived at the scene, I took Olivia home. I don't know what ramifications there were to the incident. Andrew flew home the following weekend. January was on us before we really knew what was happening. Suddenly, my tatty old minivan took on a new significance. Both Emma and Olivia had to get all of their gear to the flat they were sharing at uni suddenly. Emma was quite happy to travel in my minivan. Once all her junk was staked in the back along with Olivia. Emma was on the not favorite to daughter list with her father after he discovered his new Mercedes buried in the front of that bus. So he hadn't volunteered to drive her up. All too soon, the girls were gone. Not that I cared a toss about Emma being away again, but I was soon missing Olivia. Hey, I wasn't the only one missing her. In all the time we'd been going out together, I would been invited to Olivia house for a meal once, and I really think that was only because I needed to ask her father for her hand in marriage officially. The week after the girls left, Olivia mother called me and invited me to Sunday lunch. As I've said, I appeared to get on just fine with Olivia mother and her sister, who was still following me around like a puppy. Now, Olivia father started calling me son and even asked me to join him in a round of golf. Not one of my sports, but I could see I was going to have to take it up after Olivia and I were married. Got to keep the in-laws happy, I figured. There was a little bit of an ulterior motive in these invitations to meals. On the weekends when Olivia came home every month to visit, we would spend a lot of time at her parents' house. Now that I was a regular and apparently welcome visitor there, once a month I drove up to spend the weekend with Olivia. Although that wasn't how it usually worked out. Most of the time, Emma was with us, and her main topic of conversation was Andrew and how she was going back to Germany to marry him when she had her degree. Emma also had the infuriating habit of coming home with Olivia as well. She slept at her parents' house but appeared to spend most of her time at Olivia's parents' place. Well, let's be precise, she spent most of her time wherever Olivia was. That included the little time Olivia spent at my flat. By the time New Year came around, plans for our marriage were in full swing. Let's be fair, Olivia's mother was just about organizing everything along with Charlotte. That is, I think Olivia and I were just agreeing to everything that they wanted to do. Hey, I wasn't paying, it was Olivia old man who was footing the bill. I would just say, are you all right with this, Thomas? Head nod and say, wait till it's your turn, son. Take my advice and only have boys. I suppose he wasn't a bad old stick, really. As far as Charlotte was concerned, this marriage was only a rehearsal for what she termed the big one. Thomas would look at me and raise his eyebrows when she said that. Well, everything was going along just great until just after Easter when Emma got the darn Dear Jane letter. You know what I mean? Andrew dumped her for some other girl. I told you he was a jerk. Emma wasn't my favorite person, but I saw that letter. He was an insensitive jerk, as they say over there. It was a few weeks later that Olivia first said she wanted to put back the wedding. Emma was originally getting married a couple of weeks before us. Now, Olivia wanted to put our wedding back a month or so because Emma was upset. The girls graduated and moved back home. My minivan again. They both got jobs pretty quickly. Nothing special in local banks. Oh, different banks. I was, of course, still juggling college and work, although I was working on my own a lot more. I even had a couple of blokes working for me on occasion. I would generally see Olivia most days to start with, but as time went on, she took to going out with Emma first one night a week, and then two. Then suddenly, she stopped meeting me after my night classes, so now she was with Emma 3 nights a week. Not that anything untoward was going on. I was too well known in town for anyone to get clever with my girl, and that was what Olivia was known as by then. Okay, the month or so the wedding was put back became until after New Year. As New Year approached, Olivia wanted to put it back further until Easter. Now, up until that point, I would been patient. I realized that Emma was her friend, but it seemed to me that we were going to have to wait until Emma found her another mug before Olivia was going to walk up the aisle with me. It all came to a head in mid-January. I arrived at Olivia's house to pick her up around 7:30. Olivia and Emma were car-sharing, going to work. That night, neither had come home yet. Olivia hadn't called me to put me off, and neither had called home to tell their parents of any change of plan. I was not a happy bunny and went looking for Olivia's car. It wasn't hard to find, as our town isn't very big. I found it in the car park of one of the pubs on the outskirts of town. Inside, I discovered Olivia and Emma sitting there with some guy. They were so enthralled with the line of crap he was throwing Emma that they didn't notice me enter. I bought a drink and positioned myself on the other side of the room. I sat watching as a meal arrived for them, and they all sat and ate it. I did note that Olivia was drinking only non-alcoholic drinks. It was gone 9 before they got up to leave. Both girls were apparently still enthralled with everything that came out of the guy's mouth. Jesus, talk about a line of crap. The wanker wouldn't know one end of a gun from the other. They must have got right out to her car before Olivia spotted my minivan parked alongside it. She came dashing back in and looked around for me. I was at that time in conversation with a couple of guys I knew. Daniel, how long have you been here? Olivia asked as she came up to my table, followed by Emma and the wanker. Since about 8. My fiancé stood me up this evening, so I thought I would have a quiet drink by myself. Why didn't you come over and join us? You must have seen us sitting there. Oh, I did, don't you worry. But you didn't really want me along, did you? If you had, you would have called and invited me to join the party, wouldn't you? What was it? Does the flashy little git fancy a threesome or something? How can you say such a thing? Rodney invited Emma out this evening, and Emma didn't want to go on her own as she doesn't know him that well. Well, why no phone call to me or even your mother? I forgot, that's all. Well, I forgot to tell you I was here. Okay, now you'd better drive your friends home. They appear to be waiting for you. And make sure you drop the arsehole off first. I wouldn't trust that little bullshitter as far as I could throw him. Who are you calling a bullshitter? The guy demanded. You slimy little git. The pantomime began. Yes, I was childishly taking my frustrations out on the little git, but he really should have kept his mouth shut. If he had, he could well have got out of it with some dignity. Anyway, he had been telling the girls how much of a tough guy he was all evening. Anyone in the SAS can handle themselves, even the clerks. Once we took the argument out in the car park and there wasn't an audience anymore, he wasn't so brave. As a matter of fact, he did a runner after trying to slam the pub's door in my face. The automatic gas closer prevented that. Did you have to do that? Emma liked him, Olivia demanded. I didn't do anything, Olivia. The little tosspot talked himself into a corner and then into a fight that he didn't hang around to have. All I did was get stood up by my fiancé and went out for a quiet drink to drown my sorrows. Good night. I returned to the bar to finish my pint. Olivia came back inside for no more than a minute or so. She and Emma had a whispered conversation, and then they left. Well, the train was blowing its whistle as it came roaring out of that tunnel. The following evening, I didn't go round to Olivia House at the usual time to pick her up. At 10:30, she let herself in the door of my flat. What's up with you? Why didn't you pick me up? We were supposed to be going to see that film this evening. Oh, I forgot. Don't talk rubbish. This is about last night, isn't it? Not exactly. This is about you and me and your friendship with Emma. What has Emma got to do with it? Everything. If Emma weren't around, we'd be married by now. But for some reason, you've decided not to marry me until Emma finds some mug to marry her. Well, I'm not waiting anymore. The wedding goes off in June, or there's not going to be a wedding. Secondly, you will see Emma just 2 nights a week from now on the 2 evenings that I'm at college. You can't make demands like that. Oh, but I can. I'm supposed to be the guy you want to spend the rest of your life with, but you worry more about Emma than you do about me. Now, I suggest you go home and think about what you really want. You can bring me my answer tomorrow night. They'll be here until, shall we say, 9? But Emma and I are going to that rock concert tomorrow night. It's Emma's favorite group. She'll be really upset to miss them, and I know she won't go alone. I won't have time to come here before we go. Then I have my answer already. It's your choice, Olivia, Emma, or me. Think about it if you will. If you're not here tomorrow evening before 9, everything's off. You can either keep or sell the ring. I wouldn't want it in my flat, it would have too many bad memories. Olivia tried to talk me around, but I refused to listen to her. To be honest, I was tired of being a fish on the line. Either we got married or I would have to cut my losses. As I expected, Olivia tried to circumvent things. My phone was ringing when I got home from work. Caller ID told me it was from Olivia House. I ignored it. It rang at regular intervals until 10, when she was due to leave for the concert. 10:10, it rang again. The caller ID told me it was from Emma's parents' house. The phone rang a couple more times a little later. I assume from call boxes, as the ID was withheld. Call boxes in the local theater are set up like that. At 9, I left the flat and went over to a friend's flat, from where I could watch mine. Brian's a nice old boy who had really become like a surrogate father to me. I'm afraid that letting my bedroom to a lodger without even asking or telling me first had almost completely destroyed my relationship with my father and family. It was gone 12 when Olivia car pulled into the car park. Olivia got out, followed by Emma and the guy from the previous evening. Olivia went up to my flat, which was all in darkness. The other 2 waited by the car. She let herself in, and I watched lights going on and off as she searched the flat for me. Olivia went back down to her car, where she talked with the other 2 for a while. Then Emma and the guy got into Olivia's car and drove off. Olivia then returned to the flat. I made myself comfortable on Brian's sofa. He did suggest I go home and talk it out with Olivia, but I figured she made her decision at 10. I wasn't prepared to play second fiddle to Emma in Olivia affections, no matter what it cost me. Brian could see the car park from his bedroom, and he came out to tell me that Olivia car had returned about half an hour later. I went back into his kitchen and watched Emma go up and into the flat. Olivia obviously wanted some moral support. By 8:30 in the morning, neither girl had left the flat. Actually, I would painted myself into a bit of a corner. There was no way I could get out of Brian's flat without them seeing me. Now, I know I was playing silly games, but I wanted them to be wondering where I was. It was obvious that neither girl was going to work that day. They were planning on waiting me out. After all, I would have to put in an appearance to get my minivan. Well, that's how I think their minds were working. The masterstroke I came up with to get past that one was to call a guy who was working for me. I had him come around and drive my minivan to the site where we were supposed to be working that day. It worked like a dream. It was only when the old minivan's engine started that the girls realized what was going on. They came running down the stairs and jumped into Olivia's car, then set off in hot pursuit of the minivan. I suppose they thought I was driving it. I went down and got into my car. Now, that was something they didn't know about. I would finally bought the car that Olivia and I were supposed to be going on honeymoon in. I drove it over to the house I would bought another secret from Olivia. This was the house I thought we were going to start our married life in. At that moment in time, it looked like a building site as the guys hadn't finished yet. Well, I kept putting the date back every time the wedding date went back. There wasn't much to finish, so I got stuck in there for the day and slept there that night. The following day was a college day for me, and I couldn't miss it. Although the building work was coming along just great and I was earning extremely well, I still had designs on becoming an architect. Having the car that Olivia didn't know about was my saving grace that day. Several times I spotted both girls around the college, but they didn't see me or even know I was there. I've got to say that at this juncture, if Olivia had been alone, I most probably would have spoken to her. Possibly we could have sorted things out, but I somehow doubt it. Emma's presence prevented me from going to Olivia. That evening I called the flat. Brian had just called me and told me that Emma had left Olivia there alone. "Daniel, where are you?" "That's none of your business, Olivia." "Daniel, I'm sorry, but I couldn't let Emma go to that concert alone." "But she wouldn't have been alone, would she, Olivia? She had that guy with her." "Or was he with you?" "He's Emma's boyfriend, you know that. I'm your girl. You were at one time, Olivia, but you're not anymore. Tell me, did you tell your mother to go ahead with the June wedding date?" "Well, no, I didn't. You were acting so strange the other night." "You're the one who's acting strange. I told you last night was your chance to decide whom you wanted to be with, Emma or me. You chose Emma. It's over between us. There's nothing left to say. But I couldn't leave my friend on her own." "Why not? She left you on your own when she went to the Germany, didn't she? Do you think she cared about you when she was planning to marry that jerk she met over there?" "Olivia, I'm not playing second fiddle to Emma for the rest of my life. It's over. The engagement is off, the wedding is off, and you are out of my life. Goodbye, and please leave that flat tidy. I don't live there anymore, as you've no doubt noticed by now." "Where are you living, Daniel?" "In the house I had bought for our wedding present, but you chose not to live here with me. Goodbye, Olivia. I hope you find what you were looking for." With that, I hung up the phone. It was the following evening that Olivia's father and mother paid me a call. Of course, they knew about the house. I discussed almost everything with them. In my opinion, my relationship with Olivia's father had always been tenuous, to say the least. So, I thought that telling them about the house was a wise thing to do. They had kept my secrets from Olivia. Both the car and the house were supposed to have been my wedding surprises for her. I was surprised that they actually understood my position. It became apparent to me that although I didn't think I would have been Olivia's father's first choice for a son-in-law, they actually hoped that Olivia's affection for me would separate her from Emma. As it turned out, that didn't happen. It was a very sad parting that evening, and they wished me the best. I gather they never told Olivia they knew about the house, where it was, or that they had come to see me. They told me straight out that they felt they wouldn't ask me to change my mind and take Olivia back. They had hoped Olivia's love for me would break the hold Emma seemed to have over her. But now they had come to believe Olivia would always be under Emma's influence. Olivia did try to speak to me whenever she saw me for the next few months. The trouble was she was always in Emma's company when she did see me. I had no intention of talking to her in that girl's presence. I also gathered she was still telling people that we were engaged. There, she ran into a problem. I had moved on with my life, or to put it more truthfully, I was trying to move on, and I was not finding it easy. I had started dating other girls, more than anything to try and take my mind off Olivia. I must add, not very successfully. However, one of the girls I had gone out with, who apparently had designs on making it a permanent arrangement, just happened to overhear Olivia tell someone else that we were still engaged. From what I heard, that encounter apparently resulted in a real catfight. But after that, I never heard any more reports of Olivia claiming we were still engaged. Time passed, as it inevitably does. At the end of that year of college, I gave up on the idea of becoming an architect. The reason I gave everyone was that my building work had really taken off in a big way, as in truth it had. I'm not sure where my reputation for quality workmanship actually came from, but apparently, I had built one. In truth, Olivia had signed up for a design course that I needed to take. I saw her name on the list when I went to register for that next year. Don't ask me how she talked her way into that course, but she did. I decided not to register. I threw myself into my new and expanding business. Funny that I had started working for myself so that I could do my architect thing, as it gave me the opportunity to choose my own working hours to suit my studies. Suddenly, I was one of the most respected small builders in town and run off my feet with work. I didn't see much of Olivia or Emma. Charlotte would turn up at my house every so often. I think she made it pretty plain that she thought she was in the running for becoming Olivia replacement in my heart. Looking back, I think I did love Charlotte, but as I would a sister, not as a prospective life partner. So, I told her that would never happen. At the time, I knew I liked the girl and felt a genuine affection for her. But if I had gotten emotionally involved with her, I would be forever running into Olivia. That would have made life too complicated and was something I wanted to avoid. As time went on, I saw less and less of Charlotte. It must have been nearly 2 years after I broke up with Olivia that I met up with Grace again. She was an old friend from my school days, but whereas Olivia and Emma had been a year behind me in my brother's class, Grace had been one of my peers. We'd gotten on well together in school, and I suppose if I hadn't gone off to my Michael Jonas, we might have gotten together sooner. Grace was always a good laugh to be with. Well, she always had been at school. She did have a little bit of a reputation for putting out, but I had never gone after her on those grounds. Grace was just fun to be with, especially now. Now, I'm not claiming I felt the same way about Grace as I had done about Olivia. I know I quickly grew to love Grace, but Olivia had been my first real love. Many people have told me that your first love is something different, and I have cause to agree with them. Anyway, 10 months after we got together, Grace and I married in the local registry office. It wasn't the big affair that Olivia's mother had planned for Olivia and me, but it was what we wanted. Well, needed, actually. Time was always going to be a very important factor in Grace's and my relationship. You see, it was shortly after we started going together that Grace was diagnosed with cancer. It went into remission after she had her first batch of chemotherapy right after the wedding, but it was the sword of Damocles hanging over us. The next 5 years of my life I devoted to Grace and building my business. Even in her condition, Grace was always fun to be with, and she did me the honor of presenting me with 2 wonderful daughters. It was in our 5th year as man and wife that Grace's cancer returned with a vengeance. Chemo did little this time except make Grace feel pretty terrible. In the end, she made the decision to refuse any further treatment other than painkillers. We managed to spend another 3 years together before she finally took her leave of us. Our 2 daughters took it in their stride. Their mother had prepared them for that day from the moment they had been born. It was them who really supported me that cold January day of the funeral. It was also them who invited everyone back to the house for the wake. 6- and 9-year-olds taking charge of almost everything whilst their father wandered around in a daze, feeling sorry for himself. Grace had done a really good job with them. My company had done a lot of renovation work for the church at a discount, as it was Grace's church. Personally, I'm not really into the religion thing. We'd rebuilt the boundary wall after an old yew tree had died and fallen on it. The tree had been there many hundreds of years. Its demise and removal had left a few new grave plots very near the church's main door. I would spoken to the vicar and reserved one of these newly available plots for Grace. Grace was a lively person, and I thought she would like having a plot near to where everything was going on. I thought she deserved that. Well, whether I believe or don't believe, it was Grace's grave. Although I suppose one day it'll be in there with her. Of course, I never mentioned it to Grace. Of those who came back to the house, I was surprised to find Olivia's father, Thomas, and Charlotte among them. They both gave me their condolences personally. They also told me that Olivia's mother was ill in hospital, or she would have been there with them. As a result of that conversation, a few days later I called into the hospital to see her. She was actually in the same ward that Grace had been in during her last days. I had been too preoccupied with my wife to notice her or anyone else who was in there. Luckily, Olivia's mother was recovering from her illness, although I never did find out exactly what it had been. Elizabeth, as she now insisted I call her, while I would been courting Olivia, I would always call her Mom or Mrs. Brown, asked me if I would take my two girls to see her when she got home. Apparently, she'd spoken to Grace often in her last days, and Grace had talked about the children and me all the time. I don't suppose they'll ever know what those conversations between Grace and Elizabeth were really about. I wasn't allowed to take the children into the hospital to see Elizabeth, as they were too young and were not her direct relatives. What stupid rules these places have. Both girls had been in there almost every day to see their mother. Elizabeth informed me that Olivia was not living at home anymore, so there would be no chance of us accidentally running into each other. That was the only time she mentioned Olivia or Amy, as she always called her, to me. So, 3 weeks later, I took my two girls to meet the people who were to become like grandparents to them, not forgetting Charlotte, who became a kind of surrogate auntie. As a matter of fact, Charlotte started turning up at my house all the time again, so often, in fact, that my neighbors thought that there was something going on between us. That is, until her boyfriend, John, started turning up with her as well. He was a nice guy who was dying with impatience to marry Charlotte, but for some reason, she was keeping him hanging on, much like her sister did me. They were both very helpful to me when it came to looking after the girls. I had had some thoughts of hiring a nanny, but I was trying to get by without one if I could. These were my girls. I didn't want a stranger looking after them too much. Once John told me about how frustrated he was getting with Charlotte not making her mind up about marrying him. I had a quiet word with her and told her to think very carefully about what had happened between Olivia and myself. I asked Charlotte why she was not grabbing a really nice guy while she had the chance. Her answer was one that I couldn't understand. You really don't know, do you? Well, I didn't have an answer for that question, but whatever. A couple of weeks later, Charlotte finally named the day. John, apparently convinced that I talked Charlotte into accepting his proposal of marriage, asked me to be his best man, and I said yes. Was that a mistake? I guess he'll never really know. It stood to reason that Olivia would be there. I wasn't sure how either of us was going to handle that. It was a question I chose not to worry Charlotte with. The day of the wedding was a beautifully sunny June day. I was standing with John at the front of the church as Mendelssohn's wedding march began to play. My two girls were Charlotte's bridesmaids and were being shepherded by the maid of honor, Sarah, another old school friend of ours. Sarah and I were quite good friends at school. It crossed my mind that Charlotte might have been trying to play matchmaker. Charlotte went out of her way to give me a big smile as she approached John at the altar. Then she turned her attention to her husband Tobe. It was about halfway through the service that there was somewhat of a commotion at the back of the church. I cringed as I heard a loud American voice that I recognized. Then they came clumping down the side aisle to take their seats among Charlotte's family and friends. I tried not to look, but you know what it's like. A quick glance confirmed that it was Emma and Andrew who had arrived late. I actually heard Charlotte say the poor girl she'd forgotten she was wearing a radio microphone, so most of the people in the congregation must have heard her say it as well. It's a shame that some of them didn't take the hint and leave. I was curious as to why they'd been invited in the first place. The disturbance over, the service carried on to its normal conclusion. As we began parading out of the church, Elizabeth turned to me. God, we never thought they would have the cheek to turn up, the insensitive buggers. We thought we were safe in sending them an invite as they live in America. It was as we got near the back of the church that I saw her sitting there, flanked by a couple of other women. Olivia did not look very happy, and her presence obviously surprised Elizabeth because Katha's step faltered for a moment. But then she soon recovered her poise and, with a smile and little nod to Olivia, she continued with the parade. Olivia avoided eye contact with me? Or did I avoid eye contact with her? It was obvious to me that something had happened in this family that I knew nothing about. I knew that they had never mentioned Olivia to me since I would been reunited with them, but I put that down to them being sensitive to my feelings. That, it appeared, was obviously not the case. Outside the church, we had the obligatory photo call. I noted that Olivia was not in the lineup. I saw Charlotte motion for her to join the line a couple of times, but Olivia didn't move. In the end, Charlotte looked over at me and gestured with her eyes and head. She didn't have to say anything. I knew what she wanted. Slipping off to one side, I circled the watching crowd until I was behind Olivia. Taking her firmly by the arm, I marched her into the lineup. Take that frown off your face and smile, woman. "This is your sister's wedding," I said to her in the best form of commanding tone I could whisper. "What have I got to smile about?" Olivia replied, "A darn sight more than my wife has. That was her grave you were almost standing on back there." It wasn't really, but I think that did the trick by reminding Olivia that other people had worse problems than she did. "Oh my God. I'm sorry, Daniel," Olivia blurted out. "Well, don't be. Just remember you're alive, so you have got something to smile about." One of the ushers who was on the ball threw me a small bouquet, the same as my girls were carrying, and I pushed it into Olivia's hands before I regained my position in the line. I think Olivia did manage a smile, but she didn't look like the happiest girl in the world. The photo call over, I started herding people into the limousines that were taking everyone to the reception. My two girls demanded a cuddle, and I had to tell them both how wonderful and clever they had been. As they got into their car, I noted my girls no longer had their bouquets. Olivia had disappeared back into the crowd again after the photo call, which was somewhat to my relief. I suppose one of the ushers must have found her a seat in one of the cars. Emma came up and said hello. I'm afraid I can't repeat what I said to her and that jerk Andrew. And no, I wasn't in the slightest interested in how they got back together again. Before I left the church, I went over to Grace's grave. There were 3 small bouquets of flowers lying there by then, along with the large bouquet I would put there when I would arrive. I had a quick word with her, as I always did when I was there. Funny how we do that, isn't it? I've got no belief in the afterlife, but I will stand by Grace's grave and talk to her as if she's actually there and can hear me. At the hotel where the reception was being held, it really became obvious that Olivia's presence had not been expected. After Elizabeth had left the welcoming line, she was dashing around rearranging the seating on the top table to fit Olivia in. I helped her, but I did not think it was the time to inquire what had occurred in the family. Once the meal and the speeches were over, I thought I could relax a little. You know, when someone asks you to be his best man, you tend to say yes without thinking about everything that is involved. I know that I wasn't prepared for what John said about me in his speech. He announced to all and sundry that Charlotte had had a crush on me for years, and he thanked me for persuading her to marry him instead. In my speech, I had to tell everyone that I would only known the guy a few months, but my daughters had assured me he was a suitable husband for Charlotte. Both my girls liked John and Charlotte a lot. With all that out of the way, the dancing started. Charlotte and John first, followed by the parents. Then it was my turn with the bridesmaids. Sarah was wonderful with them. We both picked up a girl each and then we danced around in a foursome. My girls thought that was great. Then Charlotte and John joined us. I don't think there's ever been a waltz danced like that before. I noted that Olivia had chosen to sit with the girls she'd been in the church with, well away from the family table where her parents and I were sitting. Later, Charlotte came up and asked me to dance with her. I took the opportunity to ask her what the story was with Olivia. "Not now, Daniel. He'll meet you in reception in about 10 minutes and tell you all about it there. Someone might overhear us out here." I somehow doubted it, but she was the boss on this one. After our dance, I watched as she went over to John. They had a quick chat, and I saw him nodding his head in agreement. Then Charlotte made her way to the lattice powder room. I knew that it had another door to the foyer, so I went out there to meet her. We sat down in a corner and she began. "When you and Olivia broke up, Mom and Dad went mad at her. You know, they were always worried about her relationship with Emma. No, they never thought it was anything sexual or anything like that, if that's what you're thinking. They had never liked the influence Emma seemed to have over Olivia. Then you came along and, well, they were over the moon. Hang on, Thomas wasn't that keen on me. Don't you kid yourself. Dad thought you were the greatest thing since sliced bread. He just enjoyed playing the proud father part, and he thought that if he was too enthusiastic, he might scare you off. But who do you think was telling everyone that you were the greatest plumber in the world? Oh, he still does that every chance he gets, by the way. Anyway, when Olivia started messing you around, putting the wedding date back and the like, well, all of us really kept on warning Olivia that she was going to lose you if she wasn't careful. Well, it happened, didn't it? You got fed up with waiting and called the whole thing off. There were only 2 people to blame, that was Olivia and Emma. Oh, Emma was always telling Olivia she could do better than you and to make you wait until Olivia was ready. Of course, it wasn't Olivia who was going to have to be ready. It was until Emma didn't need her anymore. Olivia never could see how Emma used her. Hang on, you invited Emma to your wedding. We didn't have much choice, really. Emma's father is a business partner of Daddy's, but we didn't think she and that ignorant pig she's married to would actually have the front to turn up. So what happened between the family and Olivia? That's a really sore point. About a year or so after you broke up with Olivia, I think it was just after you married Grace, Andrew turned up again and asked Emma to marry him. I don't know what happened with that other girlfriend of his. Perhaps she realized what kind of a person he is. Of course, Emma jumped at the chance, and before anyone knew what was happening, they were married and living in the Germany. Poor old Olivia was dumped just like she was when Emma went off on that gap year. I think it was then that she realized how Emma used her. She lost the only man she ever loved because she had wanted to desert her friend, who repaid her by dropping Olivia like a stone when she found herself a man. I'm afraid Olivia went a bit weird after that happened. You know she had a breakdown, don't you? Oh, you didn't. Emma dumping her right after you married Grace was too much for her to take. You know that Emma had Olivia convinced you'd come crawling back to her when she decided she wanted to go ahead with the marriage. Well, your marriage to Grace had burst that little bubble. Poor Olivia needed someone to blame, so she blamed the family. Of course, that didn't make any sense, but she blamed us just like she did when Samantha went. Sorry, Charlotte, you've lost me there. Who the heck is Samantha when she's at home? Oh God. Hasn't anyone ever told you about Sam? She was Olivia's twin. Oh heck. I didn't know you didn't know about her. Sam and Olivia were identical twins. Sam died from meningitis when they were 10 or 9. Olivia took it very bad. Really? They were inseparable. Honestly, you couldn't tell them apart. Olivia went very funny for a year or so after Sam passed away. Then Olivia took up with Emma. We all thought them being together was great for a long time because we had the old Olivia back. Well, that was until Mom and Dad realized that Emma was using Olivia. Olivia seemed to be at Emma's beck and call. Look, I was quite young when Sam died. Mother should be the one to tell you about Sam. Anyway, after Emma went off, Dad had to put Olivia into a clinic for a while. They straightened her out pretty quickly, really, but she felt very guilty about the way she had behaved towards us and blaming us for her own mistakes and never could bring herself to face us again. She felt so guilty about it, and she moved away up to New York. Mind you, I've got to tell you that feeling she couldn't face us was not the only reason she moved away. It was also so that she wouldn't risk running into you and Grace around town. I'm sorry, but that's why we cut you off as well. If we didn't know how things were going with you, we couldn't slip up and say the wrong thing when we did see Olivia. The trouble was we rarely did see her. Then Mother met Grace in the hospital. We were all devastated when we heard the news. You know Mother used to talk to Grace a lot in there, don't you? Oh well, you do now. Grace knew who Mother was, you know. She asked Mother to look after you and the girls. Hold on. You're supposed to be telling me why your mother was so surprised that Olivia turned up here today. It was obvious to me that she didn't think Olivia was coming. Well, some of our old girlfriends talked Olivia into coming down the other day for my hen night. She looked better than she has for years that night, and we were getting on quite well together. But then one of the girls mentioned you were John's best man and, well, Olivia kind of lost it. She almost went into hysterics and said she couldn't be here today if you were going to be here also. So we assumed she wasn't coming. She was really adamant the other night. Mother changed the seating around so the empty chair wouldn't advertise Olivia's absence. But you only had to say and I would have bowed out. We know. You're a wonderful person, Daniel, but we felt we couldn't disappoint the girls. They were so looking forward to being my bridesmaids. Weren't they wonderful? Yes, I was very proud of them. Their mother would have been proud if she could have seen them. I'm sure she would have. I wish I could have known her. From what Mother says, she was a wonderfully brave woman, and she was lucky to have had you as her husband. Anyway, the girls must have managed to talk Olivia around. I know they worked on her all yesterday, and now I'm going to ask a favor of you. You can say no if you like. On your wedding day, you know I couldn't refuse you anything. You've just made a mistake that I hope you'll not regret, and I'm going to hold you to your promise. I want you to dance with Olivia for me. John has danced with her a couple of times, but she won't join the family on our table. I think partly because you and the girls are sitting there, but I know that she will not be able to refuse you anything. That's why I asked you to get her to join us for the photos. Thanks for doing that for me, by the way. You know I'll do anything for you today, kiddo. But I don't know, Charlotte. Supposing Olivia won't dance with me or she throws a wobbly or something. No, I think John and I have it planned. When he sees us go back in, he's going to ask Olivia to dance again. You will dance with me. Between us, we should be able to collide with each other on the dance floor, and then we will change partners. I'll be a cotillion or whatever they call it. Olivia will not know what's happening until it's all over. I'm sure Olivia won't refuse to dance with you once you've got your arms around her. Then, When the song finishes, you take her over and sit her by mother and father. I'm sure once she's there at our table, she won't walk away from it again. Are you sure this is a good idea, Charlotte? To be honest, Daniel, I don't know. But Olivia needs to realize that we, the family, don't hold a grudge against her, and hopefully you don't either. I thought things were going on so well the other night at my hen party, but the mention of you kind of undid things a little. Well, I'm hoping the Daniel effect will work both ways. Go on then, lead the way. Lead the lamb to the slaughter. Oh Daniel, don't be like that. Go on, girl. I'm only funning you. Oh Daniel, I've got to tell you that mother's coming to see you in the morning as well. She's got something for you. You will be in, won't you? Yes, I should imagine so. The girls are so worked up. They will probably be awake all night. Charlotte took my arm, and I led her back into the main hall. As if on cue, the band started playing a waltz, and we mingled with the other dancers. Very quickly, I saw that John had got Olivia up on the floor, and he was guiding her inexorably in our direction. The slight bump and swift changeover of partners did indeed take Olivia completely by surprise. For a moment, I believe she didn't realize what had happened. Then she went very stiff as she became aware of my presence. Come on, Olivia. You can dance better than that. Just relax and let go. Relax, she did. For one horrible moment, I thought she was going to faint, but she regained herself and maybe snuggled in a little too close. I realized she was leaning against me and wasn't too steady on her feet. As the waltz ended, I half carried her to the chair beside her mother. Thomas came over and sat on the other side of her. I withdrew and sat myself by my daughters at the same table, who demanded to know where I would been. The band was quite loud, and I couldn't hear what Olivia and her parents were saying to each other, but it was nice to see Olivia talking to her parents. Around 11, I thought I would better take my girls home. It was way past their normal bedtime, and they'd had a long, busy day. As I said my goodnights, Charlotte and her mother touched cheeks with me and kissed the girls. My girls also kissed Olivia goodnight along with the others, but I don't think they had any idea who she was. As I had guessed it would be, it was a long night. Tired as my girls were that night, they were more hyped up than I would ever seen them in the past, and they had a lot of trouble getting to sleep. The following morning, the girls and I got up pretty late. Well, let's be honest here, the girls were up way before me. It was a bright, sunny day, and they drove me nuts to get out of bed so they could get into the swimming pool. They were good kids. They wouldn't go into the back garden where the pool was if an adult wasn't present. Something else Grace had instilled into their psyche. Just before noon, Elizabeth and Thomas came walking around the side of the house. The girls and I got out of the pool to greet them. It was strange how the girls had taken to Elizabeth and Thomas. I think I told you that there was a rift in my family. My parents doted on my brother's children but hardly wanted to know mine. Grace's folks had retired to the South Coast before her problem was diagnosed. We visited with each other quite often, but the children had never bonded with them like they appeared to have bonded with the Browns. After the children settled down and I supplied everyone with cold drinks, Elizabeth asked me if we could have a word in private. She said Thomas would look after the girls. Actually, by the time I would come out with the cold drinks, Thomas was already in the pool with them. He must have been wearing his swimsuit under his sports trousers when he arrived. I led Elizabeth into the lounge, from where we could still see the children and Thomas playing with them. Once we'd seated ourselves, Elizabeth opened the bag she was carrying and produced an envelope from it. Grace asked me to wait 10 months after she asked me to give it to you. She wrote a lot of it herself before. Well, she was very bad towards the end, as you well know, and she found writing difficult. She dictated some of it to me. Elizabeth held out the envelope, which I took from her and began to open. I'll go outside with the others whilst you read it. If you want to talk about anything, you know I'm here for you. I unfolded the pages of the letter, some of which were covered with Grace's gradually deteriorating scrawl and others apparently in Elizabeth's neat hand. Hey lover boy, how are you and our girls getting on without me? I know that when you read this, you'll have been gone for 10 months. Well, that's how long I have asked Kathy to hang on to it before she gives it to you. This is very hard for me to write. I'm not sure I even know what I want to say to you or how to say it. Please forgive me if it doesn't sound right. Daniel, I feel guilty not only for leaving you but also for marrying you in the first place and bringing all my problems into your life. We'd only been dating a couple of weeks when the doctor gave me the news. It took me some time to decide whether to tell you about it or not. I was frightened you'd stick by me because of some twisted sense of duty. You know you were that kind of man, but I must tell you I loved you, and I know you love me for myself. When you encouraged me to have the girls, although you knew you were most likely going to have the job of raising them alone, I knew that it wasn't pity you felt for me but real love. I'm sorry I can never repay you for all that love that you have showed to me. Daniel, I have loved you more than any man I have ever known. I know that you do not believe there is an afterlife, but I hope one day you are proved wrong, and we shall meet again there. That's the worst part over with. Now I must ask you to think of the rest of your life and our girls' lives. I'm going to ask you to do me a big favor. I'm going to ask you to find another mother for our girls. They are going to need a mother around when they get older, and you are going to need a companion for yourself. Having met Elizabeth, I think I even know who the best candidate probably is, and I think that in your heart you know as well. Elizabeth has told me a lot about Olivia and you and what happened between the two of you back then. From what Kathy has told me, I'm sure that Olivia did and still does love you, but she was under that horrible girl's influence. I know it's not a nice thing to say, but in fact that did work out in my favor, even though I know it upset you at the time. They say that the Lord moves in strange ways. Please think about finding Olivia again. Show her the compassion and love that you've showed me in the last few years, and hopefully, she will love you and my girls as much as I do. Daniel, I know that she loves you. At this point, the letter changed to Elizabeth's handwriting. Elizabeth and Thomas have become good friends of mine since I've been in hospital this time. I've also gotten to know Charlotte, who came to see me the other day. Charlotte loves you as well. God, you were a lucky man. All these people whose lives you've touched love you. Kathy assures me that she is going to keep a friendly eye on you and our girls. You know that they haven't got any grandchildren yet, and they assure me they will treat our girls as if they are their own grandchildren. Please allow them to do that. Whatever happens, Kath has been a good friend to me during these long, lonely nights. Anyway, if all goes well and you do as I hope you will do, Elizabeth and Thomas will be the girls' real grandparents. I've got nothing else I can think of to say to you but thank you, Daniel, for loving me. And remember, if I can, I will always be watching over you and the girls from wherever I am. Goodbye, my love. Till we meet again, Grace. The signature, which had 10 crosses scrawled under it, one for each year we'd been together, was in Grace's shaky hand. I sat and cried for I don't know how long before Elizabeth came back into the lounge with a cup of tea for me. I can only assume she'd been watching me read the letter through the lounge window. I suddenly became aware that I couldn't hear the girls playing in the garden anymore. I must have looked around in panic. It's all right. Thomas has taken them out in the car to get ice cream. It's plenty warm enough for them to be in their swimsuits today. Thanks, Elizabeth. You obviously know what Grace says in this letter. Yes, but just because I do know, you don't have to do as Grace suggests where Olivia is concerned. The content of that letter is private between you and Grace. They are no business of mine, and my lips will always remain sealed as to that letter's content. Thank you, Kathy. But tell me, what do you think of Grace's ideas? I will try not to advise you one way or the other, Daniel. I'm Olivia mother. My opinion would be biased, and it is your decision to make. But I would think it's only fair to all concerned that you at least get to know Olivia again before you make any decisions. Well, Olivia might not want to marry me anymore. We've been apart for some years now. I'm trying my hardest not to influence you one way or the other, Daniel, but I've got to tell you, yesterday Olivia was saying how lovely your girls were and how she wished they were her own children. And of course, with all the consequences that come from that. I must have looked confused because I couldn't understand what consequences Elizabeth was alluding to. Damn it, Daniel. She was saying she wished she had married you when she had the chance. The girl is heartbroken whenever she sees you. Oh, I'm sorry. I understand you now. You know that I still have strong feelings for Olivia. Walking away from her was the hardest thing I ever had to do in my life. As a matter of fact, I had to force myself to be angry with her, to almost hate her. I'm not sure I can put those feelings behind me now. Are you going to try? Well, of course I am. It was Grace's last request of me. I can never forget that. But I think I'm going to have to get to know Olivia socially again before I can make any decisions. I'm going to need to know if the girls take to her and how she takes to them before any thoughts of a relationship between us can be contemplated. You're no fool, Daniel. I can see that you've got your priorities right. The children must come first. Of course, we need to get them together with Olivia somehow and watch to see what, if any, kind of affinity builds between them. Yes. I've got to be careful they don't think someone is trying to replace Grace in there. If that should happen, it would be a disaster for everyone. I don't want to play with Olivia affections and then be forced to walk away again because the children are unhappy. From what Charlotte told me happened with Emma before, I couldn't do that to her again. Elizabeth leaned towards me and kissed my forehead. Grace really had you taped, didn't she? She said you were the most thoughtful person she had ever come across in her life. I must have blushed with embarrassment then because I suddenly felt very hot. Well, how are we going to? I think my voice faded a little. I'm sure Grace would think it's a wonderful idea. Remember, Daniel, she did say she wanted you to find another mother for the girls. At a ridiculously early hour on a Saturday morning for me. Anyway, 2 weeks later, I awoke to hear my daughters talking to someone downstairs. After dragging myself out of bed, I found Charlotte and John unloading all sorts of goodies out of their car. It was then that I realized just how much effort Grace had put into these pool dos, as she had called them. They had brought along lots of things that I had overlooked. Well, I had never had to think about them in the past. Charlotte was to tell me later that Elizabeth had been given a list of things that I would forgotten by my girls when she called in the previous evening. I wondered why they hadn't pointed out my oversights to me. When I asked them, they said that I was going to be too busy. The lawns need to be mowed before any of the guests arrive. Do as you're told, Daniel, and don't ask questions. I thought I told you Grace had trained them and me well. Just after lunchtime, some of the guys who worked for me began to turn up with their wives and girlfriends, as did some of the neighbors with their children. Elizabeth and Thomas arrived at about 1:30 with a very quiet Olivia in tow. She looked embarrassed to see me at first but was soon playing with Charlotte and the children in the pool. I think she was wearing one of Charlotte's bathing suits. It looked kind of familiar. I spent most of the day circulating, often with John as company. I think I heard the story of almost every day of their honeymoon, except for the private stuff. The speculation, but I don't think they got out of bed for the first 2 days. Well, John didn't mention those 2 days anyway. It's funny, but sometimes it's what folks don't say that is the most telling. Around 9 in the evening, I thought it was about time the children went to bed. Russell gave me a nudge as Olivia went up with Charlotte to settle them down. Half an hour later, when the 2 sisters came back down, I went up to kiss my girls goodnight. Is that really her, Daddy? My oldest asked me the moment I got into their bedroom. Who are you talking about? I asked. Olivia. Is she going to be our new mother? The younger explained. Hold on. Where did you two get the idea that there is going to be a new mommy? Don't be silly, Daddy. Mommy told us a long time ago that you'd find another mother for us. Oh, she did? Did she? And what else did your mommy tell you that she didn't tell me? She said that Charlotte's sister would probably be our new mother and we were to help you catch her. Catch her? What did she mean by that? Mommy said Olivia got away the first time, and if you got friendly with her again, we should help you catch her. Oh God. Grace, you've really got me set up, haven't you? Sorry, Daddy. I couldn't hear what you said. Oh, nothing, girls. I was just offering a prayer to your mother. Now give me a kiss goodnight and we'll talk about things tomorrow. Is Olivia coming over again? We like her. I don't know, baby. She might. Well, if she doesn't come over, can we go and visit her? There comes a time in everyone's life when you have to admit that you are on a losing wicket and throw the towel in. I figured that this was my time. Okay, girls. If Olivia doesn't come to see us tomorrow, we will go and see her. Now will you both please go to sleep? Good night, Daddy, they said in unison. I'm damn sure I heard them giggle as I left the room. When I got to the stairs, I halted and sat down on the top step. I could hear the party going on outside and someone doing something in the kitchen. For just a little while, I needed some time alone to think about what my girls had said to me. Bugger. Don't talk rubbish, you bleeding idiot. You've got to think about everything since Grace passed on. You've been drifting along without much thought about anything. A little voice in my head seemed to say to me. It was obvious to me that my girls liked Olivia from the moment they saw her. I remembered the way they looked at her at Charlotte's wedding. The question was, did I like Olivia anymore? What a bloody stupid arse question that was to ask myself. Like her? I loved her. Well, I did once, didn't I? Although it was me who pushed Olivia away because I was not going to share her affections with Emma. Well, Emma wasn't in the equation anymore, but my girls were. Yeah, I think I could see myself sharing my girls with Olivia. Hey, how did that question get turned around? And if I think back, what was it that Grace had said to me on more than one occasion? Half of you is enough for me, Daniel. What did Grace mean by that statement? Had I never given Grace all my love? Had she known that there was a place in my heart that belonged to Olivia? Damn, that woman could read me like a bleeding book. Bugger. Why does life have to be so bloody complicated? Wouldn't it be nice to be one of those people who see everything in black and white? I seem to have so many different thoughts going on in my mind at the same time. Right, Daniel? Let's think this out logically. Do you love Olivia? Yes, I'm damn sure I do. Do the girls love Olivia? Well, they've only just got to know her. They certainly appear to like her. That's to be expected. There isn't much to dislike about Olivia, but they can't love her yet. They have only just met her, but they do appear to be prepared to accept Olivia as a surrogate mother without question. For now, does Olivia like the girls? From what I saw of them together by the pool, she's really taken with them. No, I don't think that was an act. Olivia mind doesn't work that way. No, Olivia was having a great time with my girls. I could see them bonding together very quickly. Now, the big one, does Olivia still love you? Well, there's only one way to find out the answer to that, you silly sod. Go and ask her. Back outside, most of the folks who were still there were sitting in a big circle on the patio by the pool. John was walking around keeping everybody's drinks topped up, while Thomas was still playing with the barbecue, scrubbing it down. I think Thomas was a more conscientious cook than I ever was. As I approached the circle of chairs, Elizabeth got up and came towards me. Mercedes and Charlotte are in the kitchen doing some of the washing up. I think this would be a good time for you to have a talk with Mercedes alone while she's got her hands in the sink. Don't worry. Charlotte will make herself scarce when you get in there. Between you and my two girls, you're planning to get Olivia and I married off a bit quick, aren't you? Daniel, I can assure you that none of us has said anything to Olivia about you and her getting back together. But I'm afraid the girls were asking her some embarrassing questions earlier. We weren't expecting that. So I gather. I think Grace had been making plans for a long time. I just wish she'd let me in on them. Tell me, Elizabeth, exactly how long did you know Grace for? You didn't just meet her on her last day in hospital, did you? Well, no, Daniel. We met at the Cancer Sufferer Support Group, didn't you know? No. Grace never talked about what went on there. So, she was cooking this reconciliation between Olivia and me for some time then? To be honest, Daniel, I don't really know when she found out who I was. Grace asked me about you and Olivia. I told her the truth as I saw it, but she did say to me more than once that if you two got back together, she would not have to worry about you and the girls. Damn it, I know for sure now that Grace knew me far better than I know myself. Woman's intuition, Daniel. You chose a wonderful wife in Grace. Now, why don't you go and have a quiet word with Olivia? I went into the kitchen where Olivia was washing while Charlotte dried. I took the drying cloth from Charlotte before Olivia had realized I would entered the room. For a few minutes, Olivia carried on washing and placing things on the draining board, and I took them to dry them. Then she suddenly stopped what she was doing. She must have seen my arm taking the plate she just put down. She turned and looked at me. Long time since we've done this together, Olivia, I said. Olivia didn't reply. She just looked at me. I placed the plate in the rack and held out my hand for the next one. Olivia passed me the dirty plate that she had been about to wash. Shouldn't it go in the water first? Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking, she said as she took the plate back and started to wash it. I would say you were thinking, but not about the washing up. Olivia, tell me, what were you thinking? Do you really want to know? I wouldn't ask if I didn't want to know. I was thinking what a bloody idiot I am. And why is that? Well, I had the chance of spending the rest of my life with you, and I threw it away. How could I have been that stupid? Maybe you weren't stupid, Olivia. My wife Grace was a believer. Not that I've ever been, but she always did say the Lord moves in mysterious ways. Perhaps if he does exist, and I'm not saying he does, he had a job for me to do before we got married. Now I think that job is over, and there's a job for you to do now. And what's that? Well, there are two little girls upstairs who are missing a mother. They seem to be of the opinion that you were the chosen one. Olivia looked at me with a confused look in her eye. Let's put it this way. They had some nice new dresses they wore as Charlotte's bridesmaids, and now they want to wear some more as your bridesmaids. Daniel, are you asking me to marry you? Well, no. I don't have to ask you that question. I asked you that question years ago. I'm still waiting for you to name the bloody day. Wrong thing to say. 2 plates got broken, the one Olivia was washing when she dropped it as she almost fainted, and the one I dropped as I went to catch Olivia before she fell. The sound of the plates breaking brought Elizabeth and Charlotte into the kitchen from the hall, followed by 2 little tykes who should have been in bed. I got the nasty suspicion that they were all eavesdropping out there, and Thomas came running in the back door from the garden. The picture they were presented with was me holding Olivia in my arms. Elizabeth and Charlotte started crying. My girls, who had big grins on their faces, couldn't understand why they were doing that, nor could they understand why their daddy and Olivia had started crying either. I thought you two were in bed asleep, I managed to say to them once I had got my emotions under control. Come on, it'll take you back up. No, Daniel, it'll do it. I've got to get used to looking after them, Olivia said as she extracted herself from my embrace. Come on, girls. We've got lots to talk about. It worked miracles, and a month later was our wedding day. John and I got to the church early, and I asked him to wait while I had a word with Grace. I walked over to her grave alone. Well, girl, you set me up good and proper, didn't you? Now, this was your idea, so I don't want you getting upset with me over it. I think you're right, though. Olivia will make a great mother for the girls. Look, Grace, you do realize what you've done here? Olivia is going to want some children of her own sometime, so don't you dare hold it against me when we get all cozy with each other. Well, I would better go now, but I'll be back with the girls in a couple of weeks. Olivia and I are going away tomorrow for a week or so, but I'll tell you all about it when we get back. Bye for now, babe. 10 minutes later, I was standing before that same altar again. Only this time I changed places with John. I've got to admit, I was surprised that my family, without exception, had all turned out. I think that was Elizabeth's doing. She can be a very persuasive woman when she wants to be. The thing I was curious about was that 10 of my workers were all dressed in identical new suits. Most unusual for that lot unless they got a job lot from somewhere, which I doubted. They were sitting on the ends of the pews by the aisles, not with their respective loved ones. I smelled a rat. They were up to something. As the service ended, all 10 of them got up and left the church before Olivia and I had started the parade out. As we walked through the main door, the guys, standing in 2 neat lines, confronted us. Long-handled shovels at the shoulder. Someone called out a command, and the shovels were first placed at the present and then into a line of arches for Olivia and I to walk under. You buggers, I said to them as we stopped under the arches while the photographer took pictures. We ain't finished yet, boss, one of them said under his breath in reply. I wondered what the buggers had planned next. Then we had the normal photo call. During the photo call, Olivia came into possession of a large bouquet of flowers. When the photographer had finished and we began to make our way toward the waiting limousine, Olivia suddenly stopped. Will you wait here for me a moment, Daniel? There's something I've got to do now. Please don't move. I stood and watched as Olivia walked over to Grace's grave and placed the bouquet she was holding on it alongside the one I had left there before the wedding service. For a few moments, she stood there alone. I could tell she was saying something, but I, like everyone else, could not hear what she said. I figured it was private between her and Grace. Then she signaled to my girls, who joined her and placed their small bouquets on their mother's grave as well. Now I realized where the 3 bouquets came from at Charlotte's wedding. Obvious if I would only thought about it. Once Olivia joined me, we continued our way towards the limousine, only to see it move away as we got near. It was replaced by my old Bedford minivan. The last time I would seen it was 3 weeks before when the guys decided our yard needed a cleanup. I thought it had gone to the breaker's yard. Now it stood there looking better than I think I would ever seen it. Bright new paintwork, ribbons hanging from the ladders mounted on the roof rack, and a liveried chauffeur at the wheel. The boys opened the sliding side door. They had kitted the back out with a sofa for Olivia and me to sit on. It's a convertible, boss. If you get impatient, just pull the lever under the arm and you've got a bed, one of the boys whispered to me with a smile on his face. With smiles all around, Olivia and I climbed inside. The sliding door was locked in the open position for the short drive to the hotel where the reception was being held. That night, Olivia and I spent our first night together as man and wife. I awoke at some unearthly hour in the morning to the sound of Olivia sobbing. What's wrong, babe? I asked. What a stupid, inane way to ask her. Nothing. I'm just so happy, but I'm annoyed with myself for how I behaved towards you. I thought you would wait forever. Well, we're together forever now, so stop dwelling on the past, I said as I took her in my arms and kissed her. Our past was never mentioned again. The girls started calling Olivia mother very quickly. I noted they only ever called her mother and never mommy, as that was what they called Grace. Whose idea the difference was, I don't know, but I would often hear Olivia ask the girls how mommy would do this or that. Olivia would always do as Grace had before her. Several years were to pass before that train sounded its whistle in that tunnel again. We had all settled down to watch a video one evening when the telephone rang. Our eldest answered it whilst I paused the video. Who's calling? I heard my daughter ask. Mother, it's for you. Someone called Emma. Olivia took the telephone from my daughter and, after pressing the speakerphone function, replaced the handset. Hi, Emma. How are you keeping? Oh, Olivia. How wonderful to hear your voice. Olivia, I'm in a real state. I caught Andrew running around on me, so I'm getting divorced. I really could do with meeting up with you for a chat. We could get together like the old times. Well, yes, I suppose I could meet you and we could do lunch, Emma. Hold on a moment whilst I check my diary, Olivia said as she picked up her handbag. Couldn't believe what I was hearing. Olivia was going to get back with Emma. Olivia saw the amazed expression on my face and smiled at me. What's the date today? Olivia asked no one in particular. The 3rd of January, came Emma's disembodied voice from the phone. How about the 6th of January 2026? Olivia said. I might be free that day. Did you say 2026? Olivia? That's 20 years away. You must be joking, Emma replied. No, Emma, I'm quite serious. All of our 3 children should be out of the house by then, so I should be able to find some time to do lunch with you. 3 children? I thought Daniel only had 2. No, actually, Daniel and I have 2 and a bit at the moment. There is a chance it could well be 2 and 2 bits. After all, twins do run in my family. Goodbye, Emma. Give me a call in about 20 years. With any luck, we'll have changed our phone number by then. Olivia switched off the telephone and then sat back in her chair, staring at me with a silly grin on her face. Our 2 girls were quicker on the uptake than I was, and they started to laugh. Suddenly, I realized what Olivia had just said to Emma. Twins? I asked. Well, that's what the doctor thinks, but it's a little early to be sure yet, Olivia replied. I was hoping to know for sure before I told you and the girls. I was stunned for a moment, and then I broke into a wide grin. Twins! The news filled me with a mix of excitement and nervousness. I pulled Olivia close and kissed her on the forehead. We're going to be parents again, I said softly, still wrapping my head around the idea. Yes, we are, Olivia replied, her eyes sparkling with happiness. Our girls were giggling and bouncing around, clearly thrilled at the prospect of having new siblings. Does this mean we get to help even more? Our eldest asked. Absolutely, Olivia said, laughing. You're going to be the best big sisters ever. Over the next few months, we settled into a routine. Olivia's pregnancy progressed smoothly, and our girls were a constant source of joy and curiosity. They asked endless questions about the babies, wanting to know everything about what it would be like to have twin siblings. As the due date approached, the anticipation in our house was palpable. Olivia and I spent countless hours preparing the nursery, making sure everything was perfect for the new arrivals. Elizabeth and Thomas were frequent visitors, helping out and providing support whenever we needed it. One evening, as we were putting the finishing touches on the nursery, Olivia turned to me with a serious expression. Daniel, there's something I need to tell you, she said quietly. What is it, Olivia? I asked, concerned. I've been thinking a lot about our past, about how we got here. I want you to know that I regret every moment I wasted not being with you. I let Emma control my life for so long, and I nearly lost the best thing that ever happened to me. But I promise you, I'm here now, fully and completely. I love you, and I will never let anything come between us again. I took her hands in mine and looked into her eyes. Olivia, we've both made mistakes, but the important thing is that we're here now, together. I love you too, and I can't wait to start this new chapter of our lives with you. The arrival of the twins, a boy and a girl, brought even more joy and chaos into our home. Our girls adored their new siblings and took their roles as big sisters very seriously. Olivia and I were exhausted but incredibly happy. Our family felt complete. As the years went by, we faced the usual challenges of raising a growing family, but we faced them together as a team. Olivia and I made a point of never letting anything come between us again. We supported each other, communicated openly, and made sure to keep our love strong. One day, as we were sitting in the backyard watching our children play, Olivia turned to me and said, You know, Daniel, I think Grace would be proud of us. We've built a beautiful life together. I smiled and squeezed her hand. I think so too, Olivia, and I know she's watching over us, just as she promised. Life wasn't always easy, but it was full of love, laughter, and the kind of happiness that comes from being with the people you love. Olivia and I had found our way back to each other, and nothing would ever tear us apart again. And that's how Daniel's story unfolded. Should he give love a second chance with Olivia or move on? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to like and subscribe.